We're live. Thanks for stopping by, yo. Today I this thing on? Testing.
Okay, I do this. Just ask about me, I'm the rudest. I send a message like a tech, forget the slide, I be direct. I said it how I meant it, don't condone, I'm just expressing. When I say that I'm the best, it's cause I really be excessive. Take a lesson, leave a message, I make less cause I'm in testing mode. But bet when stepping off the ledge, I'm blasting off next to blow. Except that I'm intentional, my mission might affect your soul. I tried to come profess, but no, so this is my confession. Loving like super deeper, I'm from the future like Luke.
All right, we live. Yo,
Hey,
what's good,
going
everybody?
on?
Appreciate you for stopping by. My name is Tasso. This is my guy, Willie. And we're going to have some talks today, some important discussions around the topic of mental health. But before we even kick it off, I just wanted to ask you kind of why you even wanted to have this discussion with me, because I know we've been kind of hitting back and forth on Facebook for a bit, and now we've been able to, due to divine synchronicity, combine our energy to this specific thing. So what is your passion behind this, or why did you even want to have this discussion?
Well, personally, for me, it was just I wanted to be able to express myself beyond the constraints of what people were giving me. I wanted to know my identity, and with that came for me searching even more. Why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? Why am I want to dress the way that I want to dress? Why am I saying the words that I'm saying right now? Didn't I speak a whole nother language? So it derailed into all of those
You
questions.
just went into a lot of stuff right there. Like we can
Yeah,
unpack each of those things for a minute,
hey,
yo. Like from thinking about
real,
what you're thinking about to identity, like that's real, man. Actually, you told me a story yesterday that I think can even give people a bit of, I don't know, a more realistic view of why we want to speak to this. Because as Black men, I feel like one of the things that is missing is that outlet, that emotional outlet, that ability to be vulnerable and transparent. And what that usually leads to is our own destruction, whether it's individually or as a part of some whatever sect of society that's been pushed aside. And so I don't know if you wanted to be open with that part of your story or not, but if you would, I feel like that could help people just to kind of understand who you are and why you want to help other people.
man, and that's what it really come down to, helping other people. When it comes to anything else, to say that, hey, what you was going through, how you felt in the way that I seen you and how you operated, it helped me in a way because I was going through a similar situation. That I feel like makes us more connected than anything. So to be sort of something of a connected piece to that, I'm blessed and honored. But at the same time, I feel like I want to use that gift even more and more as I progress in life, because that's ultimately more experience. That's what we're here for. We're
Yeah,
here to
bro.
help each other. We're here to give a handout. We're here to see what we can all add to the
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah. I like that. That even that picture or that image of us all adding to the picture. It's like this big painting, right? And everybody has their paintbrushes, and we take our pain and we turn it into paint, and we have to make something creative out of it. And I feel like that's what we put on this planet for, really. Like at the end of the day, we all struggle with stuff, but the way we go through that and experience it and then show the world that is kind of what determines who we are as people. And I feel like this topic of mental health is so important because one of the things, at least from my perspective, it's kind of the foundation of everything else. So for me personally, why I want to speak to this is I've been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Last year in November, I was diagnosed, or last year actually, it was November, it was official, but technically it was back in April. And so for about a year and a half now, I've had this diagnosis. And one of the things that I've always thought was how is this something that is attached to me? Like I don't see myself as somehow unable to cope, but the way that society is structured, I'm kind of seen as an anomaly, a threat, something that isn't perfectly fitting into this psychonormative framework that the West has constructed, right? And so for me, I'm just like, how can I speak truth in my situation? How can I lend my perspective to this whole thing and try to make it so people can understand? Because I feel like there might be other people in our situation who is just looking for somebody to validate their existence. Like, oh, it's not crazy for me to feel this way. You know what I mean? But yeah, bro, at the end of the day, that's the thing for me. It's like you have your mental health, you have your physical health, and you have your relationships, and then your career, and then finances and all this stuff. But it's all kind of built on that structure, that mental health. And for Black men, at least I know in the UK, there's this thing called the Mental Health Act that was brought about in the 1983. And Black people specifically, but Black men are 4 times more likely than white men to be detained under that act. And the highest demographic is Black Caribbean people. So you have the most charismatic subset of the population has been misunderstood and characterized as mentally ill. And that just kind of strikes me as, what are we doing here? Like, are we actually trying to work towards mental health? Or are we just here nitpicking at what we think our mental illness is? Because those are two very different things. And so, with your background, I wanted you to even speak to that a bit, because I know that you're thinking about training to become a therapist, especially for those who are intellectually handicapped. And so, what has that journey been like for you? What have you been able to notice? What are some things that you can take away or bring to the table in terms of how we can start moving towards a better solution?
Experience is the greatest teacher,
Well,
and to be able to live life and experience other ways and different walks and different talks, different intellects is a way to not only open up your mind to the greater sense of a whole, but be more compassionate. You know, it definitely made me more thankful throughout my growth, getting to know, getting to experience, because you know, not everybody has.
so what exactly is that like for you? Like, what is a day like for you when you go, or maybe not the whole day, but just like, what is that experience working with somebody who has these actual mental handicaps that now you're injecting this positivity, this structure into that person's life? Like, how does that make you feel? How do you go about that?
Every day I wake up, I gotta give thanks. You know, hey,
Word.
that's the number one
That's
goal.
what's up.
Know that without him, I wouldn't even have the breath to speak. I wouldn't even have the mind to communicate how I communicate. So that comes first before anything. And then, bro, it's literally not even talking, but feeling a connection beyond communication, in which I feel like I'm able to understand them and why the ways that do the things that they do and help them cope. So, man, it's I got
Understanding.
this.
Yeah, let me pause it real quick. Go ahead. All right, cool. But yeah, man, I think that at the end of the day, we have this difference about us as Black people, and it's been misunderstood. The way you just said that, I want to understand why they do what they do, how they act, why they act that way. I wonder if we don't have that same leeway with the powers that be today. It seems like instead of trying to understand us, they rather incarcerate us, or they rather put us away. Like, it's not really that same level of trying to meet us halfway. I don't know if you can speak to that, but it just seems to me like if we really want to tackle this issue of mental health, and we don't want to just be talking that talk, but we want to start walking the walk, it starts with actually trying to meet these people in a way that is, I don't want to, I like, because I don't want to make it seem like this victim thing, but at the same time, there needs to be this edifying, encouraging. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that type of tone is there right now.
And honestly, for most people, how can you really say if they even experience that and even in their lifetime. The
Mhm.
edification, motivation, uplifting. You know, are we even in communities that promote that type of
Like if we don't even
positivity?
recognize that in our families, then how can we expect it from? Yeah, that's deep,
So
man.
the psychology come in where it's like the study of the mind determines the functions of how you behave. So I was intrigued by knowing why are people behaving like that? But what is the root of the behavior to even sprout out? Why are people thinking like that? Why am I thinking like this? So
You
it
ever heard
was
of the
just
word metacognition?
metacognition. Yes, most definitely.
Yeah, bro. I think that's one of the things that you keep hitting at. Like you're kind of referencing that idea of being mindful of your thoughts and understanding the reason why. Because I think a lot of us run on autopilot, bro. Like we just go with the flow and we never stop to consider why am I doing this or why is this culture, society, whatever set up like this. I don't know. It just seems to me like if we stop for a second and we're like, why am I thinking like that? Why are people thinking like that? We could unlock a lot of secrets, not only about ourselves, but about each other and how we relate with each other.
Indeed. And so it was like through my experience of becoming a therapist, I also sought therapy. I in high school, you know, playing on the basketball team at HF,
Yeah.
my mind wasn't there, bro. And
Can you expound on that? What do you mean?
one year, dude, I failed a drug test.
Mm,
And it was like I I I had to take it. I had to look myself in the mirror. You know, I had to call my gramps up and tell him, well, I was kicked off the team, you know. And so he was just like, why are you behaving like that? What has you
mm.
exhibiting that behavior, you know? And I was like, I felt this type of way and I couldn't express it to anyone
Wow.
because they would be like, "Are you crazy?
Mhm.
You
Oh, you
you doing?"
wildin', bro. You wildin'. Yeah.
But what I had to take in consideration was they couldn't understand because they haven't experienced it.
Yeah, man. Even you that experienced it, it was still hard for you to
It
understand.
was it was still hard for me to understand why would things happen. And for me, growing up as a child, I wanted to understand why certain things happen the way it happened without no explanation of that, even without a necessary solution towards moving forward mentally. How can you expect, you know, a behavior to be positive?
Yeah. Is that kind of why you started on this creative tip? Like being a lot more into just expressing yourself in this way? Because I think one of the ways that I found healing is being able to express myself, being able to articulate those things that were kind of, it's like a messy knot in my head, and then being able to straighten it out into more concise lines. And I don't know if that helps you out or if that's kind of like therapy for you in a way. And we can talk about therapy later too, because I think that's a huge issue for Black men is not only like just receiving therapy, but being able to absorb those things that we have been often told make us like they're those aren't masculine traits, or those aren't, you can't cry, you can't show emotion, you got to be hard, you whatever. All these things have built up inside of us to make it so we have these emotional, like we're essentially like a rocket just waiting to be switched, right? And all this fuel is already inside us. And so if society flips the switch, if they do this, that, or the third, they flip the switch, we go crazy, and all the culture sees is, oh, another Black man that da da da. They see us in the ghettos, they see us in the whatever. not realizing that there are systematic approaches to create these environments that have fostered this mentality. It's a mentality. And if people don't know why they even think what they think, like you are somebody who's curious, you've tried to understand it, and even it's tough for you. So imagine if you don't even have the ability to try to take time to understand it because you trying to just survive.
And to survive in a life where you're given everything and anything just by asking is a crime against your humanity, because I feel like as though each and every one of us should thrive because that's what nature does. If it's all balanced out, everything's thriving. Why is anything being deprived in the nature system
That's
in a sense
far.
of growing, you know?
Yeah, that's real. That's so real. Because think about it this way: everything in nature exists the way it's supposed to. The birds fly and chirp, and the dandelions and the tulips look pretty, and you see the animals scurrying about. Ain't nobody stressing because they're doing what they were made to do. Human beings, us, we're the only creature that can deviate from that path of what we were made to do, because we have free will, we have this mind. So we can be like, bump that, God, I'm gonna do me. You know what I'm saying? And that actually messes us up, and we can't really understand it all the time, and we try to label it as this, that, or whatever. Really, it's just us acting out of a place where we're not truly centered in our identity. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. I feel like that's the root of a lot of it, bro. Like if we were doing what we're supposed to do, maybe we wouldn't have these I don't know, anxieties.
Errors.
Yeah.
And bro, honestly, it I've been starting painting stuff, drawing since I was like 7 years old, 8 years old. I mean, as I could
You
remember, I
always
still
had that
work
creative.
back then, but it was like it was just like you said, something that I did from the root, something that I did from the beginning. You know, it was like as soon as I picked up a crayon, as soon as I picked up Legos, I was building something, I was creating something. My cars, I was lining them up, making sure everything was in order. It was just that was what I did as a child. I feel like I expanded on that even more. Even with
Yeah.
playing basketball, I was able to get to the collegiate level. You know, um, it got to the point where seeking professionally was very very pinnacle. You know, God gave me strength in other ways. I call it a delay. You know, with my ACL there and my MCL, I had to really hone in on my mentality because it
That's
was
what
just
athletes
like,
will say a lot. When you
hey,
go through those injuries, you really gotta work on
man.
your mental.
So it was just like from everything being right there, taken away, it was just like I was devastated, you know, physically. I wasn't able to move. Mentally, I'm trying to figure out all these pieces that were just now in shambles because I had a clear picture and now all the pieces were just in shambles and I had to recreate the picture all over again. And it was like, who can I talk to get assistance on grabbing these puzzle pieces and putting them together on my
Word.
life?
Come
You
on.
feel me? Like,
Preach,
do I go and
man.
talk to, do I go and talk to somebody that doesn't look like me, who's trying to create a different image of my life? But it's just, ultimately it came down to knowing who I was, knowing who God is, and I thank Him every day for creating the breath in me, for creating the sun to rise every day, to fall, giving the times, giving the lights, giving the firmaments in the sky, bro, because it's beginning to seem as though more and more as life progress, we have shifted in mindset of knowing what our purpose is really here on earth. And
Consciousness is
as a
evolving.
man, as a man, the basic dynamic and thought of it has been altered to the point where you literally have to question if someone is a man or not
Yeah.
from actual birth, you know?
Well, we can get into that too, man, because that's another thing. I don't want to like. This is a disclaimer. We are just speaking real. So we're going to give you our perspective. But one of the things I feel is we are living in an age where what we have taken away what it means to be masculine, or it's hard to define. And so when we even talk about Black men and mental health, it starts with men. And one of the things that people don't realize is that men are actually significantly more sensitive to a lot of these mental health issues. We usually think of it as a female problem because it's emotions. But one of the things that I found just in doing a little bit of research is that men are actually 3 times as likely to be diagnosed with some of these mental illness diseases or mental illnesses. And so you have not only compounded with, because I think it comes down to identity, right? People who don't know who they are. And so you have this identity issue, but then you compound that on being a marginalized community within this society. And then you have this even greater problem. And my heart goes out to Black women. Obviously, like that's another demographic that has been under the foot of Western civilization. I speak to Black men because I am a Black man, but for Black women, the same thing. Like you hear about whether it's Tony or Tanya or Breonna Taylor, as we all know, like all these stories that keep on coming up where like, yo, and I think honestly it starts with the men. And one of the things that I even saw too, I don't, you probably know this, but the way that they used to break the slaves was, especially the female slaves, is they would take the men and they would what they would buck break them, right? And so
Fuck
sometimes they
yes.
would, yeah, sometimes they would castrate them, sometimes they would just whip them to a point where they don't even look like themselves. And this was the image of provision. This was the image of being the protector for the Black woman. That image has now been destroyed by this white man who now comes in and says, I'm the protector now. And I think that's happening in society in a lot more pernicious ways, where we have been publicly lynched and our name and reputation has been dragged through the mud to the point where even Black women don't really stand with us as much as we should have. That we should be in this together, but I feel like sometimes we're button heads, and I think that some of that may come from that lack of a united front. We have both been so like PTSD. They talk about the kids in Atlanta have higher rates of PTSD than soldiers coming back from Iraq, and people don't talk about that. To me, that's a huge problem. You just have a community of people who are all traumatized, and then you ask them to act normal. It's like, what do you mean act normal? Our normal is gunshots and craziness and racism. Like, that's our normal. You want us to act out of that? I don't know if that's what you really want. So that's why we really have to have these talks, because mental health on a grand scheme is great, but we need to speak specifically to the African American experience, because that is in many ways the linchpin to a lot of other experiences. We set the culture, whether people like it or not. We are the culture. People don't really understand that. People don't understand their power. It's white executives and tech executives and all these people who work in Silicon Valley. They're they're in the lives on Instagram. They watching Tory. They watching the verses. They out here trying to get their metrics on how we're moving because they want to monetize it, because they want to sell it back to us with ads. That's not how we should move. We should start owning our own power and realizing that, look, these record labels that are selling out these kids and making them become druggies or getting them shut up and don't care about them, but still, like, that's the same structures that are in place today. And like, it's really hard to get healthy when people above you are trying to keep you sick. So it's like, that's why we have to start really looking inside, bro. We got to really start looking inside and start saying, how can I get better? How can I move in a direction that makes me feel more healthy? Which actually leads me to this question, because I know that we've been speaking about it, but I want to get it defined too, or what your definition of mental health even is, or what maybe even the idea of health. Because in our society, it's been, we usually think of illness first. That's how we've been conditioned. Like in Eastern societies, they think of holistic medicine, treat the whole body, more health approach. In Western medicine, we think of treating the specific diseases. And I think that also goes to how we look at mental health, mental illness. So I wanted you to say, maybe what is your part, or what is your perspective on what health even means?
That's a great topic to touch on. And being an athlete, I feel like I have some type of experience with health. Saying that I want to be the best athlete comes with a lot of things. How fast you can run, how much you can lift, pretty much how healthy your body is to operate under these given conditions to, perform at your highest rate.
Right.
So it's like I challenge myself every year to necessarily get better, to perform at a higher rate. I ran cross country in college. Just I never did it in high school. I wanted to see how healthy my body was. Can my body continually do
Mm.
something in
That
a
endurance.
physical? I wanted to
Yeah.
build that. So I tested that health of my body. Once again, not my body giving thanks for even being here right now.
You just touched
It's
on
like
something that's kind of important too. You said you have to, because of the parameters of the game, your body has to be in certain shape. And I wonder
mm-hmm.
if, in the same way, we are in this game of life with certain parameters, but a lot of us, our minds aren't necessarily in shape. Like we haven't really been developing that, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, mentally, we haven't been developing that. And so our moral compass is all off. We don't really understand each other. We got all this turmoil, and you throw racism and COVID-19 into the mix, and all of a sudden you got this huge
uh,
this
mind
dumpster
boggling.
fire, man. Like, what are we doing?
You can't even see anybody smile anymore, bro.
Nope.
So
Mask
think
up,
about the psychology of that. Like all
bro.
you see is
Let's talk about it.
eyebrows, and you know how people be looking now. So it's just like you're looking at me funny, man. No, I'm smiling, bro. But
Bro, speak on it. Speak on it. Because that's a big
it's
thing. These masks are actually making us not talk to each other. Like, it's weird. I don't know.
it's
I don't want to be like one of those anti-maskers who's just irrational, but at some point, there's this strain of something that makes me feel like, what is the point? If I saw an ad on a train that showed two people, and the first picture was them talking to each other without a mask, and underneath it said bad. And the second picture was them talking to each other with their mask, and underneath it said better. And the third picture showed them both looking forward on their phones with their masks on, and underneath it said best. I'm like, this is what they're conditioning us towards. They don't want us to talk. They want us to all be on our phones. They want us to all be hooked in, plugged into the matrix, not able to think for ourselves. Like, is this really, I don't know. I don't want to get too tinfoil hatty, but the fact of the matter remains, like, part of our psychology has been developed in the nonverbals. How we interact with each other is based on, in large part, like they say, 90% of communication is nonverbal. So if you take away half of the face, what do you do with the way that our brains now process information? How do you actually interact with other people? Like, is it just all passive now? Or we just, it's like they're disconnecting us little by little, cutting off at the roots of our humanity. And I'm like, I can't really go for it.
am I not speaking to people but still reading their thoughts?
Maybe this will lead us to we'll start having the
you
site what do they call it when you can read minds? um
know,
yeah, bro, honestly, we start having, like, they call it brain plasticity, where your brain starts adapting depending on what it doesn't have. So if you have, like, say you go deaf, a lot of people will develop better eyesight, or vice versa. Like, your brain will just start developing those skills. And so maybe if they take everything away, we start developing like the ability to communicate mentally, because it seems like everything is, like, I don't know, bro, like, it just seems like everything is set up against us. Everything from the food we eat to the programming we watch is literally programming our minds, to the way that we engage with one another on social media that is oftentimes destructive. And I don't know, it just seems like, how are we actually supposed to get out of this healthy? It's like they just dumping crap on us, and then they expect us to stay clean. I don't know. It's a weird thing to me. I also want to ask you too, who are our leaders, bro? Like, who are the role models today that we can even look to? Because it seems like there's not a lot of them, but maybe I'm missing some people.
And to be honest, I was born in a household to be blessed enough to say I still have my mother and my father. Not only that, my grandfather and my grandmother.
It's a blessing.
And to look at them and to say, those are my heroes,
Mm,
is the greatest form of admiration for not only myself, but for what's to come for our legacy. I don't feel like anyone in this position of power now in this day and age
none of these
really
celebrities.
has
Yeah.
my nuances of praise, because what has changed?
Right.
What has changed?
Nada. That's
Yeah,
an
little.
important thing. Wow.
If you're a real leader, you're gonna make things change right away. You coming in, hey, God said let it be. He ain't play around games. It was lights. He said it.
Let
You
there be
know, it
light, and
wasn't
there
still
was.
it wasn't still people still half tweaking. No, it
No
was people was
negotiating
straight,
back and forth. None of that.
you know. So it's like when you have men at high tiers in life that are promoted throughout this program that look like us, you kind of almost have to really go into full detail.
You gotta take it with a grain of salt.
Like I was watching LeBron James and Barack Obama. They did the
Oh yeah, he
what
been
was
doing
that?
all his PR
The
runs.
shop. You know, they be doing the podcast and
Yeah, yeah,
whatnot.
yeah. In the
It-
barbershop
it-
thing.
yeah, you know, one of the first mentionings of just each other, they engage in a conversation where Barack compliments LeBron on, winning, and LeBron is just, of course, all it's Barack Obama is Barack Obama, and then Barack's just like, man, you're looking young. It looks like you made a deal with the devil, and then they both just start laughing, and then it's
Did
just
he
like
really say
I'm,
that?
I'm,
I
I'm
didn't
sitting
watch
back
that.
watching like. It's like, come on, man. If you can say anything as a black man and you know that young black male like myself are watching millions, and it's like, why even promote that stigma? Then it's like to be edited in. I'm just like,
That
for
means people
to even say
decided
that
it's
my
okay.
heroes, man. It's just
Man, I
it's
even want to get into the
not allowed to play
extras.
with, man. It's just
That's one of the things. Godliness, that spirituality, that relationship we have with him. Do you think that has a space in psychology today? Or do you think that has a space in the discussion around mental health? Like, how does that piece fit in? The whole, whether you want to call it the metaphysics or the spiritual nature of being or whatever, if that is really a big part of our identity, shouldn't that be somehow integrated into these systems, or should we account for them? Because right now they're not accounted for. We're just looking at the biology.
that is a tough mental constraint on free will itself,
How so?
because you give the human mind free will, but also tell them that I'm your creator and I'm for you and I'm with you. Who
Well, I'm
it
talking
got
about
those
with just in terms of how we actually start thinking about solutions, right? Because right now the solutions are like the DSM. It's like this big old thick book called it's like the diagnostic, I don't know, mental health, whatever. But it's pretty much used by psychologists and used by psychiatrists to diagnose people. The thing about it is that this DSM is rooted in this idea of there being a normal and then people that aren't normal. So you have this psychonormalcy that I use, that word I used before. It's like everybody has this baseline. And from that, we decide who is sick and who is not, and we codify it in this book. The problem with that is that it doesn't take into account the uniqueness of each individual. It just tries to reduce it all to some random text. And then even worse than that, they don't even go by their own guidelines. Like I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, as I said before. That was after about a month of knowing this doctor who diagnosed me. In the DSM, because I read through it, because I'm trying to understand why, how could this even happen to me? I'm reading through it and it says to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, you have to be showing 6 months prior of symptoms. So if you have to be showing 6 months prior of symptoms and this doctor only knew me for 1 month, how is he able to diagnose me with schizophrenia? So it's things like this where I'm like, okay, first of all, we have this rule book that is already messed up. And now y'all need not even going by the rules that y'all wrote. And then even worse, it's like the rule book can be changed at will because it has been changed 5 times. This is the 5th edition since 1920. So you're talking about in 100 years, this thing has been changed 5 times. And this is what's supposed to tell me who I am. This is supposed to determine the trajectory of my life. No, thank you. Like, I'm good on that. I don't know, bro. Like, our spirituality has to come into it. Like, our connection to God, if this is what we're here for, is to be stewards of the earth and to be lovers of people, we got to start thinking of how that integrates.
Let's make it simple. Let's make it simple. That's my thought pattern. Like, why does everything have to be hard? Why can't it be simple? Why can't things just have one term and only mean one thing? You know, you got these words out here with double meanings. You use them in a certain context, it means another thing. You have, of course, court terminology where pretty much if you're even speaking like this, they're not even going to listen to you because you're not saying the words that they want to even hear. So
Yeah, it's weird,
put
man.
yourself in a code of not knowing if you're casting a spell on yourself or not.
That's deep. Even the word, like the way, like spell comes from, like, it's to spell it out, right? Like to speak it into existence. Abracadabra is a word that means to create as you speak. It's an old Aramaic word. And so you're talking about the fact that our words have power. And then you have these people who are playing with the English language, trying to label people, mislabel people, change words around to mean what they want them to mean. And we all just, it's like we're all just mice. We're all just little guinea pigs in this grand experiment people want to run on us. I'm like, eventually people got to stand up. And you're like, no, I'm my own person. I don't, all that stuff y'all doing over there, cool. I'm my own person. And we need to start having that mentality to multiply, especially in our community, because I feel like we're one of the most misunderstood and misdiagnosed communities just because of the fact that you think of, like, they talk about even with like black women with pregnancy, the fact that they go through miscarriages at a rate, I don't know what the number is, so I don't want to misquote it, but they go through miscarriages at a rate higher than white women. Part of that is because the doctors are overwhelmingly white, or they aren't sensitive to the needs of this community. So you have, whether, or even like stuff like sickle cell, which is a disease that affects mostly black people. How are these things being treated? How are we being attended to? It doesn't just stop at mental health, it's the entire body, right? We talk about that holistic health, and it starts with mental, but if we're not addressing all these other things, it's kind of hard to feel good about yourself when you're not able to even survive on a day-to-day basis, or you're not able to really feel vibrant and thriving. Like you're sick in your body, it's hard to be healthy in your mind. So man, we got to really start. Actually, one of the things I just thought of, maybe, what do you think about our leaders in the future being creators? Like, instead of politicians being the leaders, like the Barack Obamas, who are very well spoken, very likable people, but maybe have some questionable histories that we don't always think about. Maybe we start looking to, not necessarily, I don't want to put the word in like celebrity, because that word I think has a lot of negative connotations, but the creators in our community who are successful. Do you think there's a role for them?
most definitely. The world is about to change in which the roles of teachers, the roles of counselors, the roles of even therapists are going to be more integrated into society because we're going to need them. After this COVID, people who literally, their minds is just all over the place. So people are going to seek people who literally have peace within themselves because they were able to not only perform a daily mental psychology breakdown of what's going on, but actually execute a plan to see above the clouds, you know? And I really don't believe everybody has the mental capacity, not only not the mental capacity, but the experience of someone who even does that mentally, you know, who
Yeah.
for someone to overcome an obstacle, who's greater to teach you? Someone that did it.
Yeah. You said it. Experience. That is the root of a lot of stuff, right? And then I think
Right.
a lot of artists are able to take experiences and create something beautiful out of it. Like that's the whole
Mhm.
point of art is to create something out of whatever was before. So you have all these experiences, you have all these, it could be good or bad, and then you take them and you create something that means something. And I think that's kind of how we should approach mental health in a way. Like we should think of it as this creative endeavor, this experiment in life, where we have all of these crazy things that have happened to us. You talked about it yesterday. You've had people run up on you. I've been arrested, put in the back of a cop car. Like we've had things happen where if we just go by what society says, we'd be messed up. But we have to take those individual events, right? And we got to form them into a narrative that actually makes sense for us, that we can step into a new identity that isn't rooted in some craziness, but is rooted in truth. Because if we're not rooted in truth, then we're able to be swayed by everything. We're able to be got by everybody.
And you're able to be used to tell a story that ultimately ain't yours, or you're telling a story that leads to other people's confusion in a sense that you're not only not causing someone to get better, but you're not giving them the tools to get better. You just, like you said, feeding them poison. You're
Yeah,
not even giving them a solution to get better. I feel like most medicines are not interned for you to get better. They're just
keep
there
you sick.
to alleviate
Yeah, yeah. They keep us
and to
dependent.
keep you coming back because at the end of the day, it's a business. You
Yeah,
got to think about politics. What are politics? They are business negotiators who determine bills and laws. Do you think they care about
man.
your well-being? They are
Not
business
in the slightest.
negotiators who determine bills and laws, bro.
Yo,
So you got to
man.
think about their psychology too. What are their objectives? What are they thinking? What's good to them? You know.
That
So
is one thing that we need to, as a people, start understanding how this alignment between what our goals are and the people that claim that they're for us. Like, just start using some common sense and critical thinking and start looking at these people, looking at the bills that they've co-signed in the past, looking at their constituency, understanding where they come from or what they might believe, and trying to understand, like, yo, are these people who have sold out to all these corporations really working for me? Because it seems like they're working for the people that are giving them all this bread. And I just want to, like, I know we weren't even going to talk about it in this conversation, but another thing that I think can be a help for a lot of these mental health issues is the use of psychedelics. And it can be kind of taboo, especially in the Black community. But one of the things that I notice is there's becoming a lot more research on these things, and it's not as pushed off to the side, but there is still a lack of awareness and understanding about like what these things can do and how they can affect us. So I don't know. To me, it's like there's a lot of tools that we could potentially use to fast track our development, our psychological awareness. But if people aren't ready for it, if they're not good with themselves, and these things won't really do much. like whatever it is, whether it's meditation, whether it's deeper relationships, whether it's finding what, like all these things that people like going to find your monk or be a spiritual seeker, like all these things, I think they need to become integrated into this better solution, because the things that they're giving us, like even with psychotherapy, like you have, like they're giving people these things called SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And these are like the normal medicines, especially they give to kids who are dealing with attention hyper deficit or ADHD. And essentially, yeah. And essentially they're giving them these medicines that dumb them down, make them not creative at all, versus like, and these things have been documented to only have an efficacy rate of around 50% versus some of these other drugs, which are more into the psychoactive area, have like 85, 90, 95% efficacy rates. So if they were really trying to help people, they would be clearly funding these research institutions more than the ones that are giving them all these bad medicines. Like they constantly doping us up with opium, knowing that it's killing people, yet they'll turn around and tell us that, oh, marijuana is bad. I'm like, wait a second. Hold on. Stop the show. Stop the show. You telling me this stuff that you injected in my veins is bad, but this natural substance that comes from the earth, or vice versa, that this is good and this natural substance is bad. And so to me, it's like we got to even go all the way back to first base, back to home plate, really, and start rethinking these things from the ground up. Like, how are we going to help ourselves? How are we going to really use these tools? How are we going to start overcoming these obstacles so that we can be in a better place to help each other? You know?
Apex thought right there, man. That's only
Bro.
something, and that inquiry just sparked me, man, because it's just like we just talked about what are their goals, like what are their psychology, what's good and bad. So it's like they're giving us this, talking about, yeah, it's good, but it's like, hey, people,
Yo.
hey, and I experienced people saying, hey, it's good, come in, it's
Yeah.
good. So, hey, you gotta know,
Both
and
eyes
knowing
open.
starts here.
Yeah.
No one travels here, and your body's able to operate.
Yeah,
But
man.
bro,
That's important. You just said no one starts here but travels here. You want to talk about that a little bit more? What you mean by that? Because I think you're about to hit on something.
the body works in all together. Without your heart beating first, nothing would travel.
Man.
Throughout the whole body, your blood, oxygen travels. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
science. But
Yeah.
you gotta think about this stuff. It's being in your body. You gotta know, hey, I want to take care of my body. I gotta know that my heart is very important.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things too. I'm very in tune with my body. I want to know which part of my body hurts and how to alleviate that pain. So
Yeah. I even
I feel
think too
like
there's
I gave us
deeper,
that
there's a
tool too.
deeper there's a deeper point that you made. I don't even know, maybe you didn't know you made it, but I think that there's this deeper point there that you have, like there's this knowing, and you do know because you spoke to it, but there's this knowing that comes from experience, this knowing that comes from true, I don't know, awareness. And I think that's that heart knowledge, right? Like when you experience something. And then there's the knowledge that comes from reading or from hearing somebody else say something or from trying to analyze a situation. And that's that head knowledge. And a lot of times I think we have this separation right now where there's this chasm between our heart knowledge and our head knowledge, and we need to bring them back in balance. We need to bring them
Mm,
back in that symbiosis, right? To where they're both playing off each other, and it's not that one is eating the other one, and like our emotions have eaten up our intellect or our intellect have eaten up our emotions, but that they're both working in concert to create a better society for everybody, bro. Like it's got to be both.
man, hey, and I'm loving it, bro. That's
You
definitely
feel me, bro? I,
Billy.
I appreciate that
I
because
had some
it's
drums
crazy
out
talk to
playing
a lot
right
of
now.
people.
You might look.
Yo, man. And that's how our ancestors would have done it.
And so it's just like being in tune, bro. I feel
Yeah.
it's ultimately the psychology of knowing your identity. Everything we talked about with knowing behaviors falls into that, because if you don't identify with somebody, you don't know how to behave, because you're like, oh, I don't know who they are, I'm creating my own behavior, my own identity. But it's just
It's facts.
knowing that first, bro, and to be able to have this space to talk to someone who was searching for that as well, you know, and to be able to hit so many connecting points, man, where I feel like many times I hear you talking, bro, and it sounds like it's definitely
We on a similar
concert,
wavelength.
bro.
We similar wavelength. I think that we're definitely vibing on a higher consciousness than most because we have an awareness. And it's not that nobody can get there. It's like it's really just a way opening your eyes to me. And the more people do that, the more people can start to understand what we're saying. Because I appreciate you in the same way. Like much love, bro. Because honestly, this conversation has been therapy in a way. Like even just being able to talk to somebody that isn't trying to gaslight you or denounce every situation you have and explain away everything and just really sit and understand, and then we can make something happen. Because to me, one of the problems I feel like is a lot of these issues, and we can even get back to the black men aspect. Black men who are dealing with these mental issues, because there is no outlet, oftentimes they have to turn to self-destruction, or they have to turn to becoming destructive in the communities that they're in, because at the end of the day, what else do they have? And then when they do speak out, or when they do try to speak their mind or say what it is that's harming them or how they feel, everybody around them is saying, oh, shut up, or oh, you ain't got it that bad, or oh, like this is like you need to chill out, right? And so it's like for black men who are struggling, we need each other because nobody else is listening. At the end of the day, nobody else is trying to hear what we're struggling with. And that's the sad truth. At least I
So
feel
true.
that way.
I don't never want to hear nobody say, I don't never want nobody else to hear, you can't get this job because I got a gut feeling. I
Mm.
don't never want nobody else that look like me to hear that. And to be in an environment where I can promote and not only help give back with my craft, to help teach, to help, guide another avenue of creativity. I want to be able to have people that look just like me get employment without someone telling them they can't get it because they have a gut feeling, even without going into prior research of their background.
It could even
So
just be the name. You see that study that showed people with the same qualifications, if one person had a quote unquote black sounding name, they were substantially less likely to get the job. So you have things like this where it's not necessarily the most devious type of racism that exists, but it's still another layer that we have to compete with. It's another layer on top of all the other stuff that was starting to come to the surface that we're starting to understand today. That's just another thing. And so, how do we battle through that? Oftentimes, we've had to we shut down. We just become we become irresponsive to the world, irresponsible in some ways, because to be responsible means you're able to control your response able. But the fact is, you feel me? So the fact is, we a lot of times don't have that freedom to be able to control our response. It's been programmed into us. And so we feel like we're irresponsible. And that's why we have all these crazy things going on, yo. We got people pimping, we got folks in gangs, we got folks doing whatever because that's been programmed into them. They don't understand that they can be responsible members. They can take control. We haven't been taught that. That's why teachers are going to change the world, bro. That's why people like you and I are going to change the world, because we need more folks that are ready to say, this is truth. And this is how we guide the next generation to finding it.
yes, let's go ahead and break it down, man. Let's define behavior, bro.
Mm.
So, with my studying behavior, the functions of behavior, people want things. It's an acronym that I remember vividly. 5C, function of behavior. C, sensory, you know, for S. E, they trying to escape something, you know. A, they trying to acquire something. They want some attention, you know. T, they want something around, tangible.
What was
You
that?
know, they trying
What was the acronym?
5C.
Okay, 5 seats. All right.
The functions of behavior, bro, is 4 functions of behavior. Because you like the way
Yeah,
something feels, you're trying to escape somewhere, you trying to
acquire
gain some
something.
attention, you
Or
know,
you
as
want
far as
something
mentally,
physical. Okay.
or then you want something physical. So with
Wow.
that being, bro, you got to think about it. People behaviors are responsive to that. When I behave a certain way, when I'm yelling at somebody, I'm trying to, you know, escape a certain situation. I don't.
Yeah. It's that fight or flight. It's the certain inputs and outputs that have controlled us for so long. But if we start to decouple the inputs from the outputs, because too often it's like that idea that like if somebody can come up and make you mad, then they have control over you, right? It's that idea. And so it's like if we have control over ourselves, then we don't have the media trying to traumatize us all by having us watch this 10-minute video of our brother being choked out on the street. Like we don't like these things, instead of making us become despondent and become feeling helpless, they drive us to action. Because right now I feel like we're all reacting. We're not actually taking that initiative to do things that would empower our community. We're reacting to the craziness of our day. And it's not like you can blame people, but at the end of the day, it comes from that lack of being rooted in that real identity, bro. It keeps coming back to that. Like that idea. Like we just really got to start thinking like, okay, who are we really? And what are we really? Because if it's not who these folks have said we are, then maybe we need to start going back and looking at our own history. Like I saw, like we've been educated by like McGraw-Hill and Pearson and like these indifferent, huge behemoth corporations who print off these textbooks. And I saw in one of these textbooks, they had a picture of a pharaoh who looked like literally the whitest white man you've ever seen. Like they had the pharaoh headdress on, bro, and he was Caucasian, no melanin, blue eyes, yo. And I'm like, how do they have this in the history book? This is what they showing kids. I gotta send you the picture after this conversation because it's one of the wildest things. I'm like, what? And so if they lying, like they talk about fake news, I'm like, yo, if the news is fake, imagine how bad history is.
Man, hey, and people don't comprehend that. So it's just like going
We
back
didn't
to
start
even
with slavery, man. So at the end of the day, if you think about health as this journey to identity, and part of identity is understanding your story, then as a collective, our story or our his story, we have to start reconstructing it from the ground up. And it can't start with us in change. It has to start back in the savannah when we were running shit, when we were really in charge of our own destinies, when we were kings and queens, when we were running the economies of the world. During the time where many of the people in Europe were still living in mud huts, there was universities in Egypt. So we're not about to do this revisionist history as if black people are subservient. Like we're not about to do that. Like, yeah, we're different, but we're also all human beings. So we have to start understanding how do we treat each other like human beings, still understanding that these are unique aspects of each person, of each community, still understanding that we all have something different to offer, and not just ostracizing and not just condemning because these people express themselves in a different way and saying, oh, they must be mentally ill. Because there are real people who are dealing with real mental illnesses out here who need
real.
real help, who need real therapy, who need real connection to people. And if we keep on misdiagnosing folks, then how are we actually going to help the real ones that really need it? Because a lot of those folks end up in prison in Rikers Island. You got your Khalif Browders, folks who are innocent even, who are put in these situations where now they've been run through by the system. It's like, what? That's not how it should be.
where your mind is at after you stare at a wall that's all white for, you feel me, 50 years.
I could tell you,
If
man.
you ain't mentally there, bro, it's
Yeah.
just
Or not 15 years, just a week, but that week was the longest week of my life. Bro, let me even tell you a story, bro. So first night I got to the psych ward, um, I remember like I got my like they don't let you wear clothes. You have to wear like one of them apron things where your ass is out. So you're already feeling like you emasculated. You feel like you were demeaned a little bit. Like you got all these people, these doctors walk around, and you just there. So I remember the first night I'm going to bed, I'm sleeping, and I hear people. They have like this electrotherapy room that was like 2 doors down from me, and I hear people yelling. And then on the other side, they had this woman. I can't remember what her her actual illness was, but she had gone through a lot of abuse, and she was having night terrors, so she was screaming. And so I'm just in this place, and I'm just hearing all this pain manifested as all this stuff around me, and I'm just like, God, what am I doing here? Like, what is really happening? And part of what I feel like is if you put a regular person in that situation for long enough, they will go crazy. And so part of the problem is that we put in potentially unhealthy people, but then we're putting them in an environment that is just as unhealthy. And then we're expecting them to get better. We talk about nature a lot and like looking to nature for not only inspiration, but for healing. Why don't they have plants? Why can't they go for walks? Like I was locked up in a room, couldn't even get fresh air, bro. Like it was crazy the lockdown they had on these people. And it was supposed to be something that made us feel better. It was supposed to be eventually making us, and that's that dichotomy between the mental health and the mental illness, right? Like that idea that we have where you're trying to treat the illness versus the whole person. And we got to get to that point. Like to me, that was just
and
one of
that
those stories to me that I'm like, yo, we got to change. Something's got to change because this is not going to work.
you just sparked another thought of me. It's like that's just a manifestation of how we treat people who we think are mentally ill. We put them in a box. We put them in a box instead of them let them go out in nature and actually look at the world and smell the air, you know, and not be confined in artificial, made up constraints mentally, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
See what everything is, you know. When it got to the point when I knew I loved what I do as far as with the ABA therapy that I provide, it was just like I'm not only teaching them and helping them with their behaviors, but I'm also showing them the world. You know, I'm
Opening up their experiences.
opening up their experience. Like, hey, dude, you could do that yourself. You know, you just have to. I'm pushing them to that limit.
Yeah.
I'm saying that they can because I'm an example of it. You know, I'm telling them what I've been through, how I overcome. So it's just like that
Yeah, bro.
coupled on the knowledge and the experience and seeing your situation, it only creates what the environment
Yeah.
produces.
Each one is supposed to teach one, but sometimes we take those lessons and we keep them, and that actually hurts other people. So to me, it's like I'm just trying to be as free and as transparent as I possibly can in case there's somebody out there who might vibe with it. Like I already know 90% of people won't vibe with it. That's cool. That's not who I'm aiming at, right? Like I'm aiming at the few people who this will really help for them to see maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I just had some bad draws and I have this environment that's not the most conducive. But if I change a few things, maybe I can get to a place where I can be healthy. Because I think health is in the cards for everybody. There's no diagnosis to me that is should follow you for the rest of your life. There's nothing that to me that says that you are irreparable, you are broken and you can never come back. The header I have for my LinkedIn profile is this broken bowl with the gold adhesive that glues it all together. And it reminds me of this Japanese word called kintsugi. And it's this idea that you have broken pottery, but you don't throw it away. Instead, you glue it back together with this golden adhesive glue, and then it becomes more beautiful than it was before. And these pieces actually get sold for more. Like they're like a tourist thing. Like people love these bowls that have been broken. And like, what if that's the same thing with people? What if our brokenness is actually what makes us beautiful? We just got to get the pieces back together. As you said with the puzzle, get the pieces back together. And then people can start to see, oh, that person was beautiful all along. I just couldn't see it when they were in their broken state. What we need is more people that are just willing to hand, like as you said, help out, man. We got to put our hand out and be like, yo, I see that potential. Let's go. That's how I feel like it should be. That's how it should be to be human, is to be connected by our brokenness, but still able to push forward in spite of it, because we know everybody else is broken too. And so we help each other and we take help when we can, but it's just this collective experience. I don't know, man.
Let me go. Hey, I'm finna. You can hit that pause right.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
that's some good.
All right, cool. We back up. Man, we've hit a lot in this conversation. We have dropped some gems. We've just had some real talk. I don't know if there's anything else that you kind of wanted to touch on before we start wrapping up. I don't want to end it too prematurely, but there's definitely a lot of things that we could hit. I know, but I don't. I want to be respectful of people's time, your time as well. Um, One other thing that I know I wanted to hit on before we left is this idea of rites of passages and how we develop psychologically. Because I know that our ancestors and a lot of ancient traditions, ancient cultures, the rite of passage was a very important step for especially young men, whether it's entering adulthood, and you still have these around sometimes, especially in the Jewish community, but whether it's entering adulthood, whether it's um, becoming a part of the larger society, whether it's becoming a husband, like there's all these different rites of passages that help people identify with this new sense of being that they have. And I wonder if because of today, we don't really, because of like the way we've framed society today, we don't really have those connections to ourselves. And this is something that I just wanted to really quickly read. And this is just off Wikipedia. It's all out there, but it says that initiation is seen as a fundamental right for human growth and development, as well as socialization in many African communities. These rites function by ritually marking the transition of someone to full group membership. It also links individuals in the community and in the community to the broader and more potent spiritual world. And so connecting people to their community, connecting people to the spiritual world. These are big, big questions that I'm not sure the West is ready to address. Like how do we make this framework? Because right now, the main rite of passage that most kids go through is if you're in the hood, it's getting the gun. If you're in the suburbs, it's getting a degree. And that's pretty much it. And it's like after that, you just constant programming all day long about who else you should be. I don't know. Have you ever experienced that? Like, do you
And,
think in
and
your life you've had rites of passages or things that have sort of helped you grow into yourself?
and now that you even posed that idea to me about your degree being considered a rites of passage, like that was kind of like what I thought in my life. As soon as I got my degree, I was like, yeah, now
Yeah,
everything's. I'm a man,
yeah, yeah. That's
I
how
got
they tell them, yo.
paper, you feel me?
Yeah, they give you that paper and they say you good now.
I was like, yeah, like if I was like, why am I feeling like this? And then
Yeah.
next thing you know, I'm over here working at a cleaners, like
Yeah.
getting paid
They like
$12 an hour
gotcha.
working at.
Yeah,
So it's
man.
just like, what did it do for me as far as? I mean, yeah, I applied for jobs. It took time, like for me to apply it. I thought it was gonna be instant. No, who's
Yeah.
really there to guide you after that point when you get your degree to, just say, hey, I got this opportunity where I can use your knowledge, use you. Like I said, bro, I don't want anybody who looks like me to ever experience. I don't think I have a gut feeling that you're not good for this job,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, that's that wax
After
stuff.
I got the degree, it was just, man, who's gonna feel like I'm worthy of a job? You know, how do I
You
have to
just hit
look? How do I have
something.
to talk? How
You
do I
just hit
have to
something
walk?
really important. My bad. I didn't mean to cut you off twice, bro. Finish
Good,
what you were trying
good.
to say.
No, that was it, bro.
Oh, so what I was thinking is like you just said, like essentially these people have to say that you're valuable in some way. That's how it works, right? Like you get the degree and now all of a sudden you're seen as valuable in the eyes of society. What I'm thinking, what just clicked in my
Isn't
head
that
is
the
like,
right stuff?
yeah, that's like the rite of passage. But what happens is I think we've outsourced the rites of passage from the community leaders to the greater society, to the greater like overarching Western culture that isn't ours by birth. And so what we have done is we've sort of allowed a different way of being to seep into what we naturally should be doing or how we naturally should interrelate. And that actually goes back to what you said when I asked you who are our leaders or who are our heroes. And you said your parents and your grandparents, your family. We don't necessarily, whether it's kids who don't have fathers or whether it's people who are removed from the family unit or people who just have dysfunctional families, we don't always have that mentality. And so we're always looking for that validation from somewhere else. And society is more than happy to give it to you in some way, right? And it's usually not the most authentic way, but you usually feel like it, like the way you just said, oh, I got my degree, I'm good now. That's how they condition us all to be, because we're looking for that sense of, oh, that's what I need to be seen as valuable. Oh, that's what I need to be seen as a part of this thing. And if we don't have, like, what do you think about mental illness and fatherlessness? Because we talk about black men, like, why not go right to that route? Because it seems like fatherlessness and the lack of role models in our community might also be leading to a lot of these mental health issues.
Who can give that rite of passage stamp as you're growing up? Like, oh, that's how to operate as a man. You know,
Mm,
who's out here giving that official operation stamp as, yeah, that's how you think as a man. That's how you walk as a man. That's how you talk as a man. In most of these households, you got women giving boys that official stamp of
yep,
how to be a man.
yep. You think that's a problem? Because I feel like women have definitely have a gift for caring, and they have an ability to see things in a different way than men do. But can that be put on the flip side? Can do men have something to offer? Because it seems like the way our culture is moving, they want us to believe that fathers don't matter.
Do a man teach his daughter about her period?
I feel you. Like we need the men to be like in the mirror with the son saying this is how you shave, or like this is how you talk to women, son, or this is how we walk, this is how you shake somebody's hand, right? Like these little things that we think don't matter actually matter. Because what happens is if you have a kid who's raised by, and this isn't a slight to women, but if you raised your entire life by that feminine influence, and maybe you've been overprotected, or maybe you've even been somehow you just haven't been fully integrated into your masculine side, maybe you begin to act out. Maybe you just don't have the right level of awareness of how women really are. Maybe you just begin to see them all as caregivers, and that begins to infect how your relationships are, because you're always trying to get something. I know for me, growing up in a household that had a it's a very matriarchal feel to it. Part of one of my problems that I noticed in relationships is that I tended to think that because if you're present, you're supposed to be helping me along my path. And it's almost like a sense of entitlement that I had to really shake myself of. But it came from, in some ways, not having that strong sense of this is what a man is supposed to do and how he's supposed to move. And I don't know, like I don't want to make everything about, oh, this is why I'm mentally unwell, or this is all. But I do think everything is connected, and there is something to be said for the fact that a lot of these kids don't have a father figure and are put in these homes or put in these places where it's institutions and bureaucracies and different donors that have essentially become the parents. Like we've outsourced parenting to the state. This is
Because everybody
wild.
got to work, bro. Everybody has to work. Got to go get, your rites of
Real.
passage is to accumulate a
Yeah.
certain amount of wealth so
Yep.
you can get a big house, so you can live the American dream. And then you got it just plays on the simple concept and topic of what we've been discussing: psychology, the
Yep.
mental health, the functions of why we behave the way we
Why we do
behave.
what we do.
Why do we want money to acquire things? What will we do for money?
Yeah.
I was just talking to my father the other day, and I was just discussing, telling him, hey, certain things in life I do want, and as a man, how do I go about acquiring it? And I do realize, you know, we talk about spiritual things in which I'm able to elaborate and have a space with them of understanding. I say, I mean, I really can't look at another man and say that I want anything of his because I don't know what he did to get what he got.
Mm.
You never know what someone did,
Real.
what passage they had to go through,
Yep.
to acquire the luxury life.
Yep.
So it's just I wanted to get a scope of how to go through these hurdles of life and stay rooted in your ground base as you go through these passages. Are they teachable to someone to also help grow? Or hey, you never know, bro. You never know what someone did to acquire what they got.
Yep.
So
So what do you
things
think
just
about your role as a therapist? How do you integrate those things? Because or how do you become um somebody who is I guess encouraging that relationship, encouraging that family unit, because you're technically somebody on the outside, right? But you still have a voice that can be constructive. So how do you use that instead of to create more dependence on the system to create people that are dependent on themselves?
and that's my goal. Every time I approach a client, I say, how can I get them more dependent on themselves instead of me? I
Mm,
even
that's important.
that belief to clients, parents. Hey, I don't want to be here every day. And in order for our plan to work, that's going to be growth in my eyes because we're ultimately connecting the puzzle pieces for, you know.
Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. Hey, there's actually this other piece too that I think is interesting. So actually, let me pull it up because I had it on this. I was doing a little bit of research before we came on here, and there was something that was interesting to me just about how we actually go about getting help for our mental health issues, quote unquote.
Mm.
Because it seems like to me there is this sense of um I don't know, like we kind of talked about it before with the fact that racism seeps into this area and we're not able to get the same kind of level of help, I guess if you could say. But there's actually been evidence to support this. And I don't think people realize that. So let me just pull this up real quick.
Man. And I never really spoke on my times where I did seek counsel, but for that given moment, man, I felt it was kind of weird. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to do it as far as I wanted to realize what I was thinking, the way that I was thinking, but it just felt like it was something missing where I couldn't like fully connect.
I feel you, bro. This was just a little so essentially I just found this article when I was online, and this line right here is something that got me. It said African Americans seeking treatment are less likely to be offered evidence based medication, therapy, or psychotherapy. This also highlights another issue, a lack of research. There is a dearth of information, not only on what is happening in the African American community, but also on what works for the African American community. And so that points out the fact that there are differences. There needs to be research into what works for the African American community. And this is the specific paper that article was referencing, which says common mental disorders in the United States, prevalence and conformance with evidence-based recommendations. Essentially, what it found was the fact that African Americans get less evidence-based recommendations for treatment. That's just another thing that's kind of crazy to me. It's like, how are we going to even get better if we're not taking the right medicine? It's like you start
Hey, and
like,
you hitting all the keys. That's probably a little bit overwhelming for most, because it's like when you really understand behavior and psychology, it becomes set in a nature that is hard for people to change.
facts.
And I was hard to change myself. So think about somebody who's been 20 years, 30 years into a mentality to try to change. Your mind is a muscle. As soon as it start working, it's gonna hurt, you know? I just correlate everything body and mind wise because it's all in sync. But when I tore my ACL and my MCL and I had my surgery and so forth, when I wasn't using my leg and it was in the cast, after I took the cast off, it was about like 4 months. After I took the cast off, my leg was not able to bend because I was not using it to bend.
Yeah.
So you
Same thing
don't
with the
use your
mind.
mind to think. Not,
Yeah.
it's gonna
You don't use
atrophy.
it, you lose it. Yeah. That's real, bro. Man, well, I think we hit a lot of stuff today. I don't want to, as you said, overwhelm the listeners because I feel like each little individual topic we hit can really open up a bunch of doors in terms of just having people understand what the need is for a more comprehensive approach to mental health, especially in the African American community, especially with the Black male community. And just being able to speak to that in a way that's authentic, I got to thank you, bro, because it's been a learning journey for me, even through this conversation, being able to speak with somebody else, being able to understand those experiences. Because without having those perspectives, then we all just fall victim to whatever the dominant narrative is, whatever the mainstream media says of us is what everybody takes as gospel. And it's our job to start speaking truth to what those things are and speaking about our actual perspectives and not letting somebody else paint us in some other way. So anything else that you wanted to say just to give the people a little bit more insight?
Man, all I just want to say is all love, bro. And the communication thus far has been nothing but, constructive, constant building. And I feel like it all starts from there. It all starts from how we speak to one another to evolve and educate and empower one another to a level of excellence. Intellectually, we're taking it to a level where people look at us and be like, why are you speaking like that? You feel me? So, hey,
Here's what it is, man.
and I love it because we weren't put in a box.
Right.
We ultimately ripped the box open.
Yep.
And began painting outside the box.
Yep. Forget your lines.
So it feels great to connect in the sense that it just to have someone and know what you've been through and to be able to open that door of communication. And I can't
It's
talk
love.
to everybody
Yeah.
and describe, what I see and how I've been through, and for them to understand and to say, hey, I know exactly how you feel. Let's try to think of some ways we can make it productive. You know, you can tell somebody how you feel or what you've been through, but if they haven't been through it, how can they even
Really
inquire
help
you
you out.
about, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like making shirts for me. I can't go to nobody who makes tea. You feel me? Makes tea to drink to try to make a T-shirt.
Yeah.
You know, they're gonna look at me like, I mean,
I
if
feel
you get
it.
a tea bag and some water, I can make a tea. You know,
Say no, no, different tea, homie.
the different tea.
uh, hey, much love to you, bro. I feel the same way. I feel like it's just the exercise in understanding. That's what this is. As we understand each other, then we grow in love for each other. And as we love each other, then everything else starts to fall in place.
It's limitless. There's no
Yeah.
constraint.
No constraint.
It's
No constraint. All right, y'all. If you're still here, much love to you. Appreciate you watching. This was another episode of, we're calling it How Are You Really? And this is sort of an experiment for me as well. I'm just having people on. We talk about things that are important. And if you vibe with it, you vibe with it. And so hopefully some of y'all were able to take something away from this. I appreciate you again, Willie, for stopping by. Much love to you. All the people out there, make sure that you are taking care of yourself, especially in this COVID-19 era. Continue to love yourself. Continue to be with yourself. Allow yourself to feel like you are part of this human experiment, this humankind, because you are, and you're a beautiful person. So remember that. Much love to you. And we'll talk again soon, man. Appreciate it.